Hello, everyone. We are just about to get started, but wanted to get on here early and make sure everybody's in the right place. And so grab your coffee and or water and get cozy for the next 30 minutes. We'll be chatting it up, won't we?
Absolutely.
Can't wait for this conversation today. I'm so excited. So happy to be here with you, Crystal. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me, Libby. I appreciate you.
We're excited. All right, we'll give you just a couple minutes to get settled in. And just so you know, Crystal, I'll be monitoring the comments. So if any questions come in, I'll be sure to ask you or
Sure.
comments. Okay.
Okay.
Excellent. I so look forward to Thursdays. Like I do. I wake up so excited on Thursdays about this. Yeah, I was extra excited today. So almost time. Let's get settled in here. All right. Okay, let's get started officially.
Yes.
So, welcome everyone, and thank you for being with us. We hope you find the session today helpful. I know you will. I have no doubt. I am so excited to have Crystal M. Cherry here today to talk about equity in board work. How do we do better? This is such a hot topic. And it has been for a while, and it's starting to shift, I think, in people's understanding and approaches. But I know they're struggling. I know people are struggling with this topic, and so I am so grateful for you coming and having this conversation with us. So I always ask people who are going to be on nonprofit coffee talk what idea they'll bring, and I loved what Crystal said. Recent research from Source and others indicates challenges around board composition that have not shifted over the past decade, despite all the talk. Um, while nonprofit organizations serve diverse constituencies, typically, board membership and leadership have remained predominantly white. And I see that day after day. And I know people have the inclination to change, and often I think they just don't know how. We're going to assume that. And so I'm thrilled that Crystal's here to provide some clarity about how to do that. So, Crystal M. Cherry, the board pro, worked 23 years as a nonprofit fundraiser serving higher education institutions, seminaries, and human service organizations. Now, as a board consultant for nonprofits, she equips and empowers boards to support their missions and change the world. Her services as principal and CEO of the Board Pro include recruitment, governance, fundraising, conflict resolution, and diversity, equity, inclusion, access, and belonging. And I love that you add that on there. That is so critical. It gets overlooked.
Yes.
So I love that. Um,
Yes.
Crystal has enjoyed training and speaking engagements with Candid, Bloomerang, Network for Good, QGiv, Keela, and Nonprofit Hub. Crystal earned an MA in counseling from Hampton University, a BA in liberal arts from Hofstra University, and professional development certifications in nonprofit leadership, social media fundraising, and nonprofit management. She recently earned certification as a Quadrant 3 leadership coach.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, and she's a contributing author to Collecting Courage, a collection of first person narratives from Black fundraisers documenting their experiences with racism in the nonprofit sector. In 2021, Crystal authored her very first children's book, Mac and Cheese Being Different is Okay, which is available on Amazon. And I just got mine the other day to
You
share with
did?
my,
Awesome.
yes, sharing it with my grandkids. So, yes, I'm super excited about it.
Thank
So, I'm so glad you let me know that. Welcome to the Nonprofit Coffee Talk, Crystal. We're so
Thank
excited to
you.
have
I'm
you
glad to
today.
officially be here.
Yes, we made it. Um, and just by way of introduction, I'm Libby V, nonprofit champion and founder of Libby V and Associates. through visioning and strategy work, leadership coaching, development support, and organizational and board development, our nonprofit leader clients successfully raise more money and have more impact. But not all nonprofits can afford to hire a consultant. So I created the Nonprofit Coffee Talk as a way to provide great content and helpful information to as many nonprofit people as I can. And I hope you find it useful. Please always feel free to suggest other topics or guests that I should bring on. And ask questions during this session, please. We love the interaction. So,
Yes.
all right. So, with all that being said, let's get started now. So, what should board members do first before they change their composition of their board? Because we get that backwards. A lot
Yes.
of the times in the nonprofit sector, we say, oh, we need to diversify our board.
Yes. Yes.
And we
Yes.
go about that. But is your board really, and is your organization ready to have people on the board? And are you all set up? That I think is one of the biggest things people struggle with, if I'm not mistaken. What?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the board should work in tandem with the organization. And we find often that the organization is a little further along than the board. Usually, your staff are usually younger, more diverse, and probably more open to having conversations about equity. And the board usually lags behind. So I recommend to really lean into what's going on with the organization, the broader organization, as you guys should be working closely together to make sure you're on the same page. But I do believe that boards really need to take a look at their kind of do an audit, if you will, of itself. One of the things I recommend to my clients is that it does they do annual evaluations of themselves anyway, just of their board work, whether or not they're fulfilling their roles and responsibilities, whether or not they're accomplishing the goals that they had set out for themselves at the beginning of the year. But I think a separate audit regarding racial equity is necessary to kind of take a look around and say, okay, wait a minute, who are we serving? What does the community that we serve look like? And do we have people from that community actually serving on the board? Do we understand the lived experiences of these individuals? Have we met with them? Have we served with them? Have we volunteered with them? Do we understand their stories? Have we allowed them to tell us their stories and tell us how they want their stories to be told? And I would imagine there are quite a few boards for whom that answer would be no. And so I would definitely start there. Once you realize, wait a minute, things don't look right here. We need to make some changes. I do suggest that board members start doing some of their own individual work. And there are a whole bunch of resources, Libby, online. Board Source has some about the awakening that many folks need to have about their own racial journey. And so I certainly have done that and continue to do that. And so we recommend that on the individual basis, board members start, thinking about your own race autobiography. Like, how did you grow up? How was race talked about or not talked about in your family? How do you feel about people of other races? We all have biases. Have you talked to your children about it? Like, just start having some of those conversations with yourself about where you stand.
Yeah.
And I think a self-reflection is so important so that you can kind of come to, because some people say, I don't know that I'm ready to have these conversations. It feels really uncomfortable to me. And that's okay. And we say push through the fear and do it anyway, right?
Yes. In fact, if it's not uncomfortable, then you're not doing it right, right?
Exactly. And so I think once you start doing some of that own personal work and kind of coming to where you are, then I think that you can come together with your board and maybe share. And that's what we do. I work with Dr. Renee Rubin Ross, who's a dear friend and a colleague, and we do this equity work together. And when we meet with our clients, that's what we do. We do race autobiographies where we ask them to share about their history as it pertains to race. And they share with one another. And there's kind of some aha moments. The light bulb goes off when people look at each other and go, wow, I never knew that about you. I never knew you grew up in that kind of background, or you had that tradition of celebrating that way. And so you start really giving each other some grace when you start realizing these people do have very different experiences than I have. We don't all think the same, And so once we start doing that, people start to relax. We're trying to build an environment where there's trust, where people feel open enough, kind of sharing what's on their heart. giving them the opportunity to fix something if they say something that's offensive. Sometimes people say things that and it's not intentional, that they're being harmful, but once we call them out and say, what you said, was offensive to me, or it didn't make me feel good that you said that, and giving that person an opportunity to fix that and recognize that their words or their actions were harmful. So once we start creating this culture where people are comfortable talking to one another, there's trust. We all realize we're all here for the same reason, which is to uplift and steer this organization in the right direction. We all have good intentions. None of us are being paid. We're all volunteers. Like, let's just break this down, right? So that, people will relax a little and realize no one's attacking anyone. No one's blaming or finger pointing anyone. We're here to all kind of learn and come to some reconciliation about this work that we're doing. And in order for us to do that, we have to have these tough conversations. And once you get there, then you can start doing the other work, which is, okay, well, first, if we don't have representation on our board, what can we do now to start getting some folks on our board who look like us?
Yes.
But before we even do that, what kind of culture do we have here in the organization and on the board? How does it feel to be on this board? How do we work together? How do we treat one another? Because that's going to matter, Libby.
Yeah.
When you start bringing in new people, you want to make sure that they feel welcomed into this new environment, and that the people who are already on the board are going to be comfortable with these new people coming on, and the new people who are coming on, they're going to feel comfortable with the current board members. And so all of that kind of has to take, and some of it is nuanced, but all of that has to take place before you actually start recruiting new people.
Yeah, that's so important. Just a couple of things I wanted to call out that you said. What a gift to give people beyond their board service, but just an opportunity in a safe environment to tell their story and have a lot of ahas about how their childhood or adulthood or whatever their experiences, how they come to the table with those, right? How they present with those, and to have those really trustful, important, direct discussions, right? That don't often happen anywhere
Yes,
else.
absolutely.
So I just wanted to call that out, and I love that that you do that first. That has to come first, and I like that also. Those questions that you asked are so important, and I would say probably need to be asked uh, all the time, like frequently. How does it feel to be on this board? And how do we work together, and how do we come to I just love it. I think that that could just be huge in sort of defining the culture, because I know a lot of times when you say what's your culture, people are like, what do you mean?
Yes,
Like it's some magical thing, right? That there's some kind of label you put on your culture, and really it's just like what you said. How does it feel to be here and work, and how do we work together? I love all that. It's so strong. That's
yes.
great. And I just am, it's not rocket science, right? It's just having conversations that can be difficult sometimes.
Yes.
How about, you mentioned now, now we can start looking around and saying, oh, and I also wanted to call out, I'm sorry. We often say our board should represent the communities in which we work, but really it should represent the people you're serving
Yes.
more specifically,
Yes.
which are two different things. And so I love you called that out. Okay, so now, where do boards find folks who increase the diversity and provide some inclusion and all those things and accessibility? Where do we find diverse board members?
Yeah. So normally, what I do when I'm doing search, when I'm looking for new board members, I interview the board members that are currently on the board and ask them some questions about, some of the things we've talked about. What does it feel like to be on this board? Do you enjoy this? Because, a lot of folks, they don't see board work as something that should be fun and enjoyable. I mean, most of the time when we're talking and working with topics that are serious topics, but it should be a place where there's some reward, there's some collegiality, and we're getting something out of this. We want
Yeah.
people to want to come to a board meeting, to want to come and serve and give up their time. And so I usually ask those kind of questions. Do you lament about going to a board meeting? And people kind of like, I never really thought about that before. Is there social time at the beginning? Are there refreshments? Is there music being played? Like, let's get into it. I want to know what it feels like to be on this board because I want to get a sense of like when I'm doing search and I'm looking for the right people, I want to be able to share with them. And let me tell you a little bit about them. I can tell you all the roles and responsibilities. I can tell you the duty of care, the duty of loyalty, and the duty of abuse. I can tell you all that. But let me just tell you the real deal about this board. Very relaxed board. Everyone comes dressed casually, or a very corporate board where they meet at a lawyer's office with big mahogany furniture. It's very corporate. Please be on time. Please be, so we set the tone by sharing exactly what kind of board it is. I know who I'm looking for. Am I looking for corporate people? If I'm looking for more casual people, or for casual people who can fit into a corporate environment or whatever. So I really want to make sure that I have a really good understanding of the tone, the culture, and the feel of the board so that when I'm looking for people, I know who I'm looking for. So for instance, I just did a search for an organization called Media Justice, and they've given me permission to share that, which I'm excited about. And they are wanting to make sure that brown voices are represented accurately in social media and in media, right? And so
Yes.
for their board, they were not scared of the word rebel. Like they wanted folks who are movement people. They wanted people who were not afraid to protest. They wanted people who thought outside of the box, like people who ask a lot of questions. And
Mhm.
so for them, they didn't want a yes ma'am, yes sir, we don't want to rock the boat kind of
Yes.
people. They wanted, and so I understood about them. And when we were doing the announcement for them, the first image that I put in the announcement, they said, nope, that's not rebellious enough. We need something with a little bit more fire. And I was like, oh, okay.
I love that.
So when I actually started looking for board members, and I just sat 6 new board members for them, which I'm really excited about,
Wow.
really diverse
That's
board members.
great.
I shared that with them. Like, we need some folks who are some rabble rousers. We need some folks who are ready to go with it, who wouldn't mind writing a letter to the president of Amazon, letting them know you're not happy
Yeah.
about some things, or to the folks at Facebook that you feel like they're not, accurately talking about the politics right now, or whatever it is. We want folks who are not scared. And so I was able to kind of go out and talk to those people and I want to make sure that they were in alignment with who they actually
Yes.
wanted on their board. In addition to the fact that they wanted more people of color, not only people of color, but brown people. They had some Indians, they had Asian, someone from the Pacific, but they didn't have any black folks on their board, interestingly enough. And they said,
Wow.
wait a minute, this is a problem. And so
Mhm.
I think I recruited 3 of the 6. I think 3 of them are actually African American. One is white, one is Latino. So I really got a really nice, diverse group of
Yes.
qualified people to serve on their board.
Yeah. That's great. Um, I just had my head had just exploded. Just everybody, my head exploded. I hope you didn't see it. It was ugly. Um, because, in my own practice, and I like to be authentic and just own up to my own shortcomings, right? We're all human. I have not been focused on capturing a description of the culture of the board. And I love that so much. That might be the most critical piece of recruiting board members because think about if you brought in, a rebellious person who wants to change the world and advocate and all those things and protest to a board that's very stuffy. That's a negative word. That's very serious and corporate feeling
Yes,
and dressed up. And can you imagine? Like they're not going to fit.
yes,
And it's going to be hard for them to find a niche and to feel comfortable.
right.
Love it. This
Yeah.
is,
So
yeah.
I had to find those spaces. I mean, I talked to people at the Free Press. Like I tried to find the places where I know I could find folks that might be really excited about this mission. But
Yes.
normally, when I am looking for people of color, I will call the Black Chamber of Commerce or the Latino Chamber of Commerce. I will reach out to the fraternities and sororities. I'll reach out to civic groups and civic associations in that community. I call radio stations. I go on LinkedIn. I mean, I'm casting a wide net, Libby, when I'm looking for individuals to serve on the
Yeah.
board, and I'm also looking for the people that fits into those niches that we just talked about.
Yeah. I love what you offer, and I want to, um, I'm gonna have my clients, like, I want them to work with you because what a service, you offer to people. It's incredible.
Thank
This
you.
can really be a pivotal point for or nonprofit organizations to
Yeah.
have the right board members and to be representing, their clientele, but
Yes.
people who are effective and engaged and committed and fitting in and all those things. It's
Yes.
just wonderful. And so I'm going to ask you another question now if you're ready. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. How do boards approach the first person of color they will ask to serve? Or maybe it's not the first person, they happen to recruit somebody on their board who's a person of color, but now they're really being more intentional and deliberate about it. So, how do they do that?
Yeah, with humility and candor and honesty, particularly if they're the first person of color to serve on your board, because you want to make it clear why you are approaching them. Because, of course,
Mhm.
they're going to feel tokenized, right? And so
Right.
you want to share, listen, we need to be honest. We have not
Mhm.
done a good job of getting the right people on our board who really look like the people in the community that we're actually serving. And so we've decided now is the time to start. And so we're looking for qualified individuals
Yes.
who we think would be an asset to our board because of your experience, because of your connections, because of your passion, because we know this is the area that you're interested
Yeah.
in, and you happen to be a person of color, right?
Yes.
Helps. But we're asking you to serve on the board not only because you're a person of color, but because you have all these other wonderful things that you
Yes.
bring to the board that's going to
Yes.
be wonderful for us. And so I think being honest and going in and saying, we've not done a good job and we
Mm.
have to start somewhere. And you're the first person. And
Yeah.
so please be clear that we intend to invite others, but you are the first person that we've looked at and the first person that we think would be a wonderful asset to our board. And maybe you have some suggestions or not, but we have to get started. And so we would love it if we could talk to you a little bit more about our work and to see if there's alignment with your values. And
That's
just be honest with them.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
yeah,
And I mean, most people would be like thrilled that you were being intentional about it, or and
yes,
changing and realizing your past isn't serving you well at this point.
yes.
Um, and I love how you keep saying qualified individuals who are people of color. I think, in the past we have in the nonprofit sector just said, we need people of color. Who do you know? Who do you know? Who do you know? And that was the qualification, was that they were a
Right,
person of color,
right.
without even taking anything else into consideration. Not that they haven't been wonderful board members, but that was just happenstance, right? It was just a nice good luck or something. So I wanted to ask you, we have a question, and I think you've addressed it already. How and where would you advise organization to go to find board members who are committed and willing to roll up their sleeves and do the work of the organization? That is a kind of a complex question, but you mentioned a few places that I think were phenomenal.
Mhm.
Lots of them. I jotted some of them down, and I think you have to be creative, and but how would you answer that question of it's that committed and willing to roll up the sleeves and do the work of the organization piece that we
Mhm.
haven't addressed yet? And then I have one other question after that.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we talk about in our trainings is, the value of trust, right? And so in Black and Brown communities, trust is huge. And so usually Black folks and Brown folks will move, right, or moved to move because of the trust that they have with the person who's asking them to move, right? And so
Mhm.
um, if you have allies in your sphere of influence at all, who you can, I don't know, partner with, if you're an all white board or all white staff, to go with you or to be on the phone call or in the Zoom room when you are talking to people. It definitely helps when you have someone who looks like the person you're asking in the room as part of the ask or as part of the conversation. I think it just kind of disarms people.
Mhm.
Um, but I do know that even, I'm a former fundraiser, right? And so when we talk about cultivating relationships with donors of color, um,
Mhm.
often, when I would go in on a call, if I'm meeting with a donor of color, I could see that there was just some relaxation. The fact that I walked in a room, we're
Yeah.
both brown people, and we might be completely different, but there's just something in our minds that triggers us. Okay, this person is okay. Whereas,
Yeah.
with folks who are different, white folks who
Yeah.
have not had a really wonderful relationship with in this country,
Yes.
I think our guards are up initially. So
Mhm.
I say that if you're going to be
Mhm.
approaching people of color, um, try to take someone who looks like those people with you. And if you can't, then go in and be your most honest, down to earth, um, transparent self, so that people feel a little disarmed and feel like, okay, they really do have my best interests at heart. And that's the
Yeah.
other thing that I do is I really, really lean in to the person. I want to learn about. I don't want to just tell you all about the organization and the great work we're doing.
Yes.
We'll get to that, but tell me a little bit about you. I understand you work
Yeah.
at the Bank of America. What is it like working there? You've been there for 30 years. Tell me about a deal that you closed recently.
Yeah.
Like, just get people to start
That's
talking,
great.
and they
Yes.
see that you really have their best interests at heart. And I think that will disarm them some.
Yeah, that's really important, I think. Representation matters, right? I mean, that's kind of a cliche term these days. It's thrown around so much, but it really does matter.
Yes.
And I love that you put it in the context of trust because that's huge. Um, and as far as getting people to actually do the work, I think that comes from being very transparent up front with what the work entails, right?
Yes.
Here's what we expect of you. I often tell organizations, right or wrong, and I'd love your thoughts on that. That if you can't really wrap your head around how much time they're going to spend, at least say, do you have an hour a week? At least it gives them a pen to put in something, right? Do
Hmm.
do you have
Hmm.
a spare hour, that you could utilize for this? Anyway, we could go down. We could talk about that a
All
whole
day.
afternoon, right? Right, how to get them to work. And I know a lot of people struggle with that, but it does boil down to make sure you get them to commit to what the work is upfront.
Absolutely.
And then you have to give them everything they need to be successful. I had somebody, and I can't even remember who it was. Wish I could give them credit. They said, you know, you you've got to set people up for success, and really your job is to eliminate any barriers to that.
Absolutely.
They were talking about their staff, but for board too, like
Yes.
the board chair and the ED need to partner to make sure that they set up the board to succeed, to do the work that needs to be done.
Absolutely.
And that means you have to remind them a million times and just set up processes and systems that make it easy. So,
Yes.
yeah.
I wish nonprofits had the resources to actually hire, people,
Yes.
particularly if it's a large board, but to hire a liaison to be the connector between the board and the staff in the organization, because it really is a job.
It is.
Think about it. When you're trying to keep people abreast of what's going on inside
Yep.
the organization, you want to make sure they have the minutes. You want to make sure those board dues are in if they're paying dues. You want to make sure they know all about the bylaws and where all that information is housed. Sending out reminders. I mean, it's a lot of work, to do that, and to put that on the ED or the development
Yes.
person can be a lot when they have other responsibilities. So,
Absolutely. That is so critical. Okay, so we're getting close to our end of our time. It goes by
oh
so
no,
fast.
my goodness, it does.
It goes by so fast. And by the way, I would love to have you back for part 2, part
Okay.
3, part 4, whatever you want. So I hear these words thrown around interchangeably, but you differentiate between inclusion and belonging. Can you talk about that, the difference?
Yeah, yeah. I've been doing a lot of reading and research on that. And, you know, you can say people are included all the time, all day long. Oh, sure, you can come. You're invited. But when I get there, how will I feel? And so there is a real distinction between including someone and being in an environment where their voices are really important, where they feel like when they speak up, everyone is listening and what they have to say is heard just as much as the next person, right? It's not just, oh, we just kind of brushed over that, but that my voice really matters. And all those nuances, things that we talked about in terms of, I see who's on my board, right? I see that I have mostly single moms on my board, so I can't have board meetings at certain times. Or most of my board members live in the city, they don't have cars, so we can't have board meetings in the suburbs. Or like, I see you. I know that this is a time of year where there are a lot of Jewish holidays. And so we're not going to have any events or board meetings during this time. Like, I'm taking into
Yes.
consideration the people who are on my board. And that's all part of feeling like, okay, they see me. I feel like I belong here. And
Yes.
then when I speak, everyone is quiet. And when I weigh in, that matters and is taken into consideration. It's not just kind of swept under the rug. Also, the people of power on the board, those different committees. Do you have any people of color leading the governance committee, the
Yeah.
fundraising committee, the finance committee? Like, do I see myself in roles where big decisions are being made on the board, where it's clear that other voices are important and they matter?
Yes.
All of that.
So that is, and again, we could talk about this question I'm going to ask you forever, but the board chair is so critical in all of this.
Yes.
And like you said at the beginning, often staff, so maybe the ED is there, they get it, right? Or at least they get it more or part way. How do you do that? How do you get your board chair to do those things when they're running the meetings, right? And assigning committees and requesting people work and those kinds of things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, and rightfully so, that relationship between the board chair and the ED is so important, and they should be
Yeah.
meeting regularly.
Yes.
I say weekly, or if not weekly,
Mhm.
definitely bi-weekly. Just doing some
Mhm.
check-ins so that the executive director is sharing with the board to the board chair what's going on inside the organization, and the
Yes.
board chair is offering support to the executive director. I think that relationship,
Mhm.
people are watching that relationship. So
Mhm.
how they model definitely makes a huge difference. And so
Mhm.
hopefully they're playing off of one another. The board chair sometimes has a vice chair who works with him or her, who's supposed to step in if the board chair is absent. The vice chair can do some of the things that the board chair might not be able to do.
That's a great point.
To make sure that some of those things are actually happening on the board. If the board chair is up here and doing
Yeah.
too many things, the vice chair can make sure. Listen, Lisa has had her hand up for a moment. Lisa, would you like to weigh in? I don't know if you noticed that at all, but
Yes.
Lisa had her hand up. Lisa, what would
Yes.
you like to say? You know,
Yes. That's so good. It's
yeah,
like a tag team kind of thing. And if
yes,
there is no vice chair, maybe the ED plays that role and kind of they just have a pad of paper between them, sit together and jot down a note, Lisa, you know,
yes,
because
yes,
it is easy when you're running a meeting to, and you want to make sure people feel like they're valued.
exactly,
Right. So,
exactly.
I love it. This has been amazing. I knew it would be, and it was. And I appreciate you so much. So, thank you for being here. Where can people get in touch with you if they'd like to talk to you about your work?
Yeah, thank you, Libby. First, I just want to say thank you for providing a space
Oh,
for folks like me to come on and talk about our areas of expertise, but also for supporting nonprofits in the way that you do. I just want to lift you up and say how much I
oh,
appreciate what
thank you
you're
so
doing.
much. Thank you. My pleasure.
So yeah, you can meet me on my website at www.theboardpro.com. And my email address is hello@theboardpro.com. So either one of those ways are great ways to reach me.
Excellent. Thank you. And just a little bit of an announcement before we sign off. So, next week we're taking a break since it's a national holiday and everybody will be away from work and hopefully having some family time. So, we'll be back on December 1st when our guest, Omar Elagusma, who will be talking about the prudent use of lending in nonprofits. So, if you're thinking of taking on some debt, when
Uh,
should you do that? And so, he's going to talk about the challenges that nonprofits face when they try to leverage capital. And and how to mitigate it, and how to use it, and when, and all those things. So, looking forward to that one too. So, thank you so much again. I hope you have a lovely day. Thanks, everyone out there. Thanks for your good
yeah.
interaction and
Happy
questions.
Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yes. All right. We're going to sign off for today, but have a lovely holiday next week.